Welcome back to the GameSpot stage here at E3 2016. Here to talk about Horizon Zero Dawn. We've got Herman and JB from Guerrilla Games. Guys, thank you so much for joining myself and Timur. What a fantastic showing you had at the Sony press conference. What was it like being able to show the game off to the world?
You know, last year we showed that boss fight, and this year we wanted to go in and really just show the game the way it plays. Just it actually is a part of the game. It wasn't a demo, and that felt really, really good.
Yeah, you really got into the nitty-gritty of like moment-to-moment gameplay instead of having this one big boss fight. I think a lot of questions after the debut were like, what is it beyond this amazing, massive, like also kind of looking scripted boss fight? But you obviously put to rest those questions, showing that there's like a massive open world. You know, you have all these options, and it was an excellent view. Like, it was one of my highlights of the press conference for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You like this man?
Yeah.
We're already getting questions in from the chat. People are asking. Let's start with things like, are all the robots, all the AIs, are they all hostile?
So no, they're not all hostile. There are more docile machines. So for example, the broadheads that you saw, which are the bull-like creatures, they don't necessarily attack on sight. If you poke them with a stick, they will surely come after you. But generally they're kind of docile, but the bigger ones, especially the sort of more predatorial looking ones, they will attack on sight, and they're very dangerous.
From a narrative perspective, I know the story we have is kind of rediscovering what happened to humanity. But is there ever an exploration of your impact on the machine animals? Because like, you see these animals, and although they're machines, you still kind of sympathize with them when you're taking these docile animals and kind of killing them or like subverting what they're supposed to be doing. Is there ever an exploration like of your responsibility to nature around you, even if it is kind of disconnected because it's machine?
You know, it was funny. We Sony made this Watcher suit. Watcher is the little one that you first encounter, pretty much. And they did a behind the scenes thing. So JB and I walk in, and the first thing you want to do is pet it. It was like an ET moment. You want to touch it and be gentle with it.
Yeah, I mean, we have this tendency these days to kind of treat like machines, for example BB-8, as if with the same kind of love that we would for like a kitten or something like that.
Exactly.
So like, it's kind of seeing the kind of the broad, what are they called,
Broadheads.
But yeah, when you kind of take over it and kind of mount it and that kind of thing, I was like, oh man, that sucks. Like, I hope that thing is going to be all right. And when you fight, I mean, there's a few hostile enemies, which is fine, but like, there's a few docile enemies that you kind of trap and kind of you scavenge and use for resources that were kind of pulling at my heartstrings, even though I didn't expect it, which is really interesting.
Aloy is very respectful of nature and of the machines, so she doesn't feel like she's just killing them for killing's sake. She's after the resources. She needs it. Right? It's a function. She's a huntress, but in a way that respects the prey.
One of the things I really appreciated was when you were attacking an enemy, she kind of, you hear her speaking and saying like, I really need the resources before she starts doing that. Is that something that happens like throughout the game? Is she always narrating it?
So there is a certain amount of self-talk to also basically bring the story across, but for the demo purposes, of course, there was a little bit of extra talk there to also explain what was going on.
Okay.
I noticed there's conversation options. Is there kind of, do they affect how the game plays out, or is it a major difference, or is it just kind of more of a slight change?
More like slight changes, more like talking to people in real life. You're not changing the world by having a conversation. But there are life and death situations basically that you can impact via dialogue. The main thing that we want to do with the dialogue is that it's a form of exploration. You're exploring the world via dialogue, and you're exploring Aloy as a character and the other characters around you as well.
Right.
You can pick up quests and side quests in the dialogue as well.
Okay.
Stepping back a bit, like, you guys are like one of the most exciting things about it, and I think the reason why people like took to it so quickly was because you guys are known as the Killzone studio, the first-person shooter studio. This is so far different from what we expected from you guys. Like, maybe everyone was thinking we'll get a different type of shooter from Guerrilla. This is such a pivot for you guys. When did you come up with this, and how confident were you that you could pull this off going into it? Was it a case of like learning as you go along, or were you kind of like confident that you had the skill set to create an open world action game?
A bit of everything there. We started after we completed Killzone 3. That was in 2011. It's been a long project. Been working on this for quite a while. And obviously we're building on what we learned in Killzone. There's the tactical combat there. There's obviously the creating of gorgeous worlds, that what we're after. But at the same time, you know, it is our first open world game. It's our first world that has quests in it. So we did hire some very bespoke teams. We hired a writing team with experience in this genre, quest designers, and all of that is new to the studio.
Right.
In terms
Yeah,
of,
and
oh, sorry.
one of the interesting things coming from first-person shooters and understanding combat really deeply and combat spaces really deeply sort of helps us to also deliver a new experience to the RPG genre.
And how deep is the RPG genre? I mean, I've seen interview footage, like, you know, there's damage counts and stuff like that. How deep does that go?
So it's not very heavily stats-based. It's not basically that every plus, minus, maybe on your weapons basically really matters. It's more broader strokes. But the real RPG element is more in the character progression. So being able to build her up, there's a skill tree there, there's dialogue options, of course. There's a lot basically to do with your character in this world.
I'm interested in how you balance that kind of the scavenging element of it. You're trying to, you know, gather resources and create stuff with, and people in games traditionally, you kind of get the satisfaction, you portray that satisfaction by, you know, increasing damage numbers. So you know, you scavenge, you get this thing, you build a better gun, and then you see that your numbers are higher. It doesn't look like you're trying to do that. So how do you kind of, you know, really emphasize that scavenging is important in this game?
Well, one part is basically that you're building up your weapons, but a large part is basically sort of learning and studying. Basically, it's not just the experience of your character, but it's the experience of you as a player that really matters. By learning their behaviors, analyzing them, scanning the robots, finding their weak spots, finding the right tools to deal with them, and getting ever better at defeating them.
Right.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the other human characters that Aloy is going to come in contact with. So it seems like she's an outsider and she wants to find out like why that happened to her. Who are the people who aren't being nice to her? Who are the people who she's kind of up against butting heads with?
Well, she's an outcast out of a very specific tribe, right? And in the trailer that we released last week, the week before, she's looked after by this gentleman, a very gentle man that basically adopted her. He's an outcast as well, and so that tribe kind of is her initial reference. But there are other tribes, and it's a little early to talk too much about the other humans in the game because that'll come over the coming months. But is there anything else we want to talk about that for now?
I think because she is an outcast, she's not necessarily that culturally embedded in the Nora tribe where she was raised. So that sort of makes her more of an explorer, somebody basically that has a different point of view and is willing to accept different points of view in the rest of the world as well.
And I would add that she, there's a lot of myth and legend and lore within these tribes, and you know, we're just talking about the dialogue system. Through exploring that, you find out that she's very much a practical person. She challenges those myths that are out there, and she's very practical. She's down to earth, and so she's kind of in the tribe, but kind of outside too. You do play as her, as a separate person.
How long has she been kind of outcast and separated from the tribe? Because I'm wondering, is she
from birth?
Okay, so exploring the world, she's almost discovering it in terms of the different cultures in the same way that the player is, right?
Yeah, the Nora tribe itself, where she was raised, is a little bit of an isolationist tribe. They don't really venture out, they don't talk to other tribes, they have their own culture, they have their own religion. So, first of all, leaving the tribe and then going outside it, basically, she gets different points of views. And also, there's, of course, a lot of legends and myths about how the world came to be like this, and every tribe has their take on it, and some of them are complete crap. Others basically might have a hint of truth within. So basically, looking through that and talking to people and exploring it, you get to learn a little bit about how this world fits together.
There's also the mention of demons.
Yes.
What is that all about? So it seems like you've got so many warring factions here. How do the demons fit?
You see the machines in the game, they're animalistic looking, right? They're all inspired by some animals, except for that corruptor that you see on the screen right now. And Aloy actually doesn't know machines like that. She encounters them, but she's unfamiliar with them. And these are the corruptors. They're kind of old world machines that are unknown to her.
Okay.
So, I mean, in terms of the world itself, in the trailers, you know, there was a civilization that came before that maybe got too great, collapsed in on itself, and now nature's taking the world back. Is it definitely kind of like based on humanity as it is right now? Is it an alternate kind of world dimension?
No, it is humanity, right?
It is humanity.
Yeah.
It is us. Where exactly this is, we were not really revealing yet. Although the internet basically has made some good guesses.
Some screen, like frame by frame, maybe some references.
The internet also makes a lot of guesses.
Yeah,
right?
they make
There's
a lot.
always a good guess out there, right?
It must be great to see that happening, though, even if it's kind of off base, to see that you've clearly thought or created this world that is resonating enough for people to want to stop and look at it frame by frame, especially as, you know, working on art and that kind of stuff. That must be like super satisfying to you.
Oh yeah, it's really fun. Basically, just going through the forums and basically people analyzing it one by frame and then sometimes getting it right and often getting it completely wrong. But it's fun basically seeing their theories.
Question from the chat, they're asking, are we going to be able to visit any of the cities, like the broken down cities from before, or is it all going to be wilderness-based gameplay?
It's a seamless open world game. You can go anywhere. You can go to the mountaintops, you can go to the rivers, you can explore the cities, the villages, the settlements, interior spaces.
Wow.
Everything.
Very impressive. And in terms of like building a world outside of the game, have you thought about that? Whether you want to explore it in stuff like comics or like you know, books, novels. That's the kind of thing that everyone's doing now. Everyone with a world wants to exploit the world and build it with it outside of it. So
we're very focused on finishing this one and making it really good first, and then basically I'm sure basically we'll explore lots of different ways of doing things with this universe.
Okay. But it's a great idea. We'll take it back to this.
Also, yeah, tell everyone I'm down for some comics.
Well,
Tam is a big comic
reader. I'm a big comic dude, so I'm always looking forward to it. And multiplayer, like, have you thought about it? Yeah, I mean, Killzone had perhaps overlooked multiplayer. Like, it had an amazing few modes, like, and more people should probably have borrowed from some of them. But have you thought about maybe bringing some more multiplayer stuff to this?
We think about a lot of different things, but
Right.
we've decided very clearly that Horizon Zero Dawn is going to be a single-player game.
Right.
So I'm going to stick with that, and that's it is already a new IP for us. It's in a new genre. There's so much newness that a studio should take on before blowing itself up. So we decided to just keep it at single player for now.
In terms of the creature design, obviously, very heavily influenced by real-life creatures. What kind of artistic liberties can you take with them? Can you sort of see creatures in real life and think, well, if I'm making a robot version, I might do this or add this?
Yeah, whether there's sort of there's of course requirements from the designers what they want to see, and in some cases they come up with really outrageous ideas. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't.
What's been the craziest thing that someone said no to?
I don't think basically we've said no to anything yet.
Very tricky.
We had to basically let a couple of them go. Basically, they were a little bit too ambitious, but basically we've got a very good selection of the current machines in the game.
So the big boss fight that we saw at the press conference, are there multiple ways to take down that one enemy? What I mean, is there kind of like, do you have to have all those weapons going in to be able to take it down? Can you take it down with like complete bare bones, or do you have to have?
There's a ton of different options out there. I mean, it's the attacks on it. It's got that arm it's kind of a long range close combat, if you will. The signature attack, I would say, is that jump on you, but it also uses the environment, throwing rocks. You can play with it. She does a number of things that you could do more of, for instance, and replace it by some other things.
Right.
She's got the explosive traps, but there's things like tripwire you can use. You can have multiple kinds of long range. There's a ton of different options. Everybody at the studio that plays it has got their own style of playing it. It's never the same.
I've seen it played a couple of times on the stage floor, basically by our own colleagues, and everyone deals with it differently, and some of them have become really sort of graceful, where they're sliding underneath its legs and jumping over it, and sort of like, whoa.
I think we've got one QA guy that can actually play it exactly the way it was recorded at for the Sony press conference, but JB and I couldn't do it exactly like that. Nor do we want to. It's very much
it requires
flexible.
skill.
Okay. Yeah.
The Dishonored guys say that when they've been playtesting and seeing people play, people have come up with unexpected things that they didn't anticipate with all the systems working together. Have you guys encountered that at all?
Emergent game design. Wow. What is the best example of that?
You can't anticipate emergent game design. That's why it's emergent. But of course, basically, we try a lot of things ourselves. We do start playing with the systems, and then basically ask the programmers to change it a little bit to make something weird and fantastical possible.
I would give as an example, we have some of these grazers in there. They have the canisters on the back. They're explosive, what's proper English here, but now it's kind of become a running thing for us to get a herd together and shoot the guy in the middle, and then boom, 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 they all go off, and that's not something that was designed as such, but it just is one of the funnest thing to do right now.
Well guys, thank you so much. When can we get our hands on Horizon Zero Dawn?
It's going to be out here in the US on the 28th of February next year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, for more coverage from this year's E3, make sure you keep your eyes peeled to GameSpot.com.